that was the first 5 minutes. It was an hour-long documentary. And I'm of the opinion when you're making a television program, especially on public TV where it's not broken up by commercials, if you can get people interested in the first few minutes, maybe they'll stay and watch the whole thing. And that's the whole point of doing what we do, is to get people to watch it. I love Milwaukee. I love the city. I have no desire, and I never did have any desire to live anywhere else. And I love being able to go out and tell a story about a neighborhood. And I think my responsibility as a journalist and a television producer is to make programs that can inform and entertain people and educate people. And I love having the opportunity to do that. Interesting about this, when I got all done with it, and I had never done one of these before, I played it for the guy who hired me to do it, and he found the language at the beginning extremely offensive, and said, there's no way we can air that. There's no way, you have to change that. And I'm not a very easy pushover, and I said, I'm not changing anything. I said, if the person who runs the television station tells me to change it, I'll change it. And then they called a couple employees in and had them watch it, and the African American employees said, yeah, I think that's kind of offensive. And I said, I'm not changing it. And so then they called the station manager in, and he said, no, I think that's good. And I argued that this is a well-spoken gentleman who's lived in the neighborhood his entire life, who knows the neighborhood, who still lives there, and is giving us the history of the neighborhood, and I think we should air it that way. So they did air it, and it won an Emmy Award. So then I was kind of free to do whatever I wanted. So the next summer, I do different things at the station, but this is what I did during the summer, really, that was making these documentaries. The next summer they said, can you go out and do another neighborhood? And I love the Brady Street area, so I said, okay, I think I'll do something on the Brady Street area. Talk about Brady Street today, how it's changed, a little bit about the history. And there was a store on Brady Street at the time. It was like a bondage leather store. And of course, I was never going to go inside. I could just see somebody telling my wife, I saw your husband run into the bondage store. But with a TV camera to tell the story, I thought that would be an interesting way to start it. And so I knocked on the door, and the lady was very nice. She goes, sure, come on in. So that's how I started this one before I got into the history of the neighborhood. This was on Brady Street, and I did this one in 1997.
Melissa, you have an unusual story. What is this, and who would buy it?
Okay, this is your basic leather harness. It's mostly for aesthetic purposes. It doesn't, it's not the most functional piece that we have. It can be worn by itself or over.
Let me see your tongue. Now, why would somebody get their tongue pierced?
Well, there's as many reasons to get pierced as there are people who get pierced.
Why Brady Street? Why did you put your story here?
Well, I couldn't really imagine it anywhere else. I moved to the east side when I was 14, went to St. John Indian High School, and one of the first places I saw when I moved here was Brady Street. Someone said, hey, I've got to show you the street. You've got to see it. It's Brady Street. And it was love at first sight. And first time I thought of maybe opening a shop, it was the only place I could imagine doing it. It's probably the most interesting street in the city as far as I'm concerned.
If you were talking to somebody from out of town, and they said, tell me what Brady Street is like, how would you describe it?
There's no real one way to describe it. It's everything. It's fun. It's interesting. You've got everything from pet stores to us.
late 1940s.
You have to remember that Brady Street had deep roots in the European traditions. There were a lot of Italians here, a lot of Polish people, some Irish, a few Germans, and they really built a great deal of that European atmosphere in this area. But then they began to move out, and younger people started to move in. In the 50s, when we get up into the 50s, the late 50s, then the hippies moved in this area. And really, Brady Street went down considerably. Across the street here, there was a building, one-family house. The sheriff one day pulled out 17 beds, and I understand there was 27 young people living. Most of them sleeping on floors, no kitchen facilities. And these were children of the well-to-do professional business people from the Upper East Side. They loved this area because this was the hippie land for them.
It is the ghosts of those 1970s hippies that for many still help define this street today. Some longtime residents say those twice-a-year Brady Street block parties got way too crowded and way too out of control.
Drunken debauchery at the end. They had 80,000 people. They only had 8 johns. They had no crowd control. They had no security. They had no crowd cleanup. Houses were getting trashed. People had to sit on their porches with hoses to keep people from urinating and defecating on them. There was paper and litter and trash everywhere. It wasn't neighborhood. It wasn't anyone who lived in this neighborhood. It was people coming in from outside thinking that Brady Street was a good place to get drunk and party.
People always say, well, when you do these things, what do you learn? When I did the Lisbon Avenue documentary, what impressed me most of all is that so often in life, you have an image, whether that be of a person, of a family, of a neighborhood, of a city, and that image is how you define that person or family or neighborhood. And Lisbon Avenue taught me not to do that, because even though you might say, oh, that's a horrible neighborhood, that's a crummy neighborhood, there are a lot of good people that live in crummy neighborhoods. You know, just like there are a lot of crummy people that live in good neighborhoods. Brady Street, what I learned from that is that the fun, happy image that Brady Street still has today is an image that it's earned over decades and decades. You know, and that's why it has the image it has today. The next summer, 1998, I went down to the 3rd Ward, and so that was about more than 10 years ago, and it was just kind of starting to turn into the hip place where they had all the condos and everything. And I wanted to do it because I remember it, I think it was back in the 70s or early 80s, where there was actually a proposal floating around Milwaukee City Hall to make the 3rd Ward Milwaukee's red light district. And just to have the dirty bookstores and the prostitutes and everything down there. And that caused some of the business owners down there to get together and form an association to save the 3rd Ward, and they've obviously been incredibly successful. And so we went down sort of at the beginning of that. So this is the first 5 minutes of the 3rd Ward.